The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is a huge open world game that can be difficult and overwhelming to start with. So in this video I'm going to give you 10 tips that will help you even on the hardest of difficulties. Tip number 1 is to focus on using your Quinn sign more than any of your others. The reason is because Quinn is a protective shield that will defend you against enemies' attacks. This is so important, especially on harder difficulties, as enemies deal much more damage. So being able to basically absorb the enemy's attack and take no damage is really useful. Now I'm not saying to ignore all your other signs, and it brings me on to my next tip, to read the Bestiary. The Bestiary shows you the weaknesses of different creatures. It tells you which bombs and oils are best to use against different enemies, as well as which sign works best. So it's really important to read so you have an edge during combat. My advice would be to use Quinn Shield before you enter any fight, and not long after, your signs will have charged back up again and you will be able to cast another. This is where reading the Bestiary comes in handy, and providing your Quinn Shield is still active, your second sign cast should be something your enemy is vulnerable to, such as Igni against humans or Yardin against a Wraith. Tip number 3 is really important. Make sure against humans with swords you are using a mixture of counter strikes, dodges and rolls, but against monsters don't attempt to counter their strike, as it's much harder and more time than not you'll end up being hit. So when fighting monsters, focus on dodges and rolls. Same goes for humans with large weapons or a sword and shield. More time than not, trying to counter will end up you getting hit and losing your Quinn Shield, which we don't want. Tip number 4 is to not rush your fights. Too many times I've got too aggressive during combat and have ended up dying. It's not a race and you don't need to rush to finish the enemy off. Take your time and counter and dodge enemies. Rushing will eventually lead to you getting hit, which we don't want, as we want our Quinn Shield active for as long as possible so we can use our other signs as well. So don't rush and take your time. Tip number 5 is to always carry weapon and armour repair kits with you. These can be bought or found around the map from looting. You don't want your sword being damaged too much because it will barely do any damage and you may as well be fighting with a broomstick. As well as this, you also want to take the time to repair all your equipped items every time you visit a blacksmith or armourer, so you always have healthy equipment and you aren't caught off guard. If you're caught in a fight with a very damaged weapon and no backup sword or repair kits, well, it's not going to end well. Another tip I can't stress enough is to loot absolutely everything. Every monster you slay, every chest you open, take everything. The Witcher 3 has a complex crafting and alchemy system. More or less everything you find will probably come in useful at some point in the game. For example, when crafting Witcher Scroll items, you don't want to have to run and find a monster's brain before being able to craft the item. If you find yourself running out of inventory space, make sure your horse's saddlebags are upgraded and make use of your chests where you can stash your own items. You can find these in White Orchard, Crow's Perch and a few other locations around the map. They are located on the map as green chests. Tip number 7 is to learn how to use mutagens properly within the skill tree. Applying a mutagen in the slots that are available that are the same colour as the abilities you've acquired gives you different bonuses. You can also use the alchemy system to make a better mutagen, and the better the mutagen, the more powerful the bonus is. For example, 3 lesser red mutagens make 1 red mutagen, and 3 red mutagens make 1 greater red mutagen. Combined with the skills in the abilities in that one skill tree, I'm getting a 40% increase in attack power. And I've got them in 2 slots, so I've got an overall of an extra 80% increase in attack power, which is crazy. So make sure you are using the correct mutagens in the skill tree, and make sure you are constantly upgrading them so that you can get the best bonuses possible. Tip number 8 is to save your game as often as you can. The most annoying thing about the game is accidentally dying after an hour of exploring and then being reloaded back into the game from your previous save an hour ago and losing all your progress. It's so annoying finishing a contract only to then be killed shortly after by a group of bandits whilst you're on your way to go and collect your reward. I literally save the game every 5 minutes and I recommend you do the same. Tip number 9 is to buy Gwent cards. As well as receiving new cards after beating other characters after a game of Gwent, you can also buy them. Make sure you are checking the stock of every merchant, every barman who pours you a drink, and anyone else who offers you a look at their wares. Make sure you are checking to see if they have any cards to sell. This will make your deck bigger and stronger and will help you get the achievement for finding all of the Gwent cards. And finally, tip number 10 is to convert your currency. You can convert any old currency you collect into crowns, and you may be surprised with how much you'll receive if you haven't done it before. All you have to do is go to the bank that's located in Novigrad. All them extra crowns will help you to repair your items, craft Witcher School gear, or maybe even just use it to gamble more at Gwent. So those are 10 tips to help you during the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future content.